Okay. I mean, it's not that much singing, but here we go. Okay. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Oh,
Test, test. Hello, hello. Hello, hello. Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing. Can you hear me? Saying good morning to Gareth, Casey, and everyone else. Is that good?
after the music? Okay. Okay, all right. Sorry?
Should I wait like 1 minute or should I just start?
I think
it's
she
like
said-
only a 1 minute prelude. So.
Okay, she said that I'll start after you finish your music, so I guess go ahead. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisa, and I'm delighted to be your worship associate this morning. Welcome to everyone present here in Worship Hall, and to those of you taking part via electronic streaming from your home or wherever you may be. We acknowledge that our FirstU campus is located on traditional, unsurrendered, and unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory, and that the work of reconciliation is a responsibility of our congregation and all Canadians. Our goal is to educate ourselves and all who have ears to hear, to be of service to those who are at risk, and to advocate for justice. Do take care and take advantage of online opportunities at FirstU to stay in touch during this time. If you are new to FirstU and would like to learn more about us, please contact us through our email, welcome@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Following our service at 11:30 a.m., please join us as well for a special version of our traditional hospitality hour. You will find the Zoom link on our website at www.firstunitarianottawa.ca or in our weekly email newsletter, the EUU. And now, some board announcements from Amy Biribe.
Good morning. Thank you for your patience. So I have a few announcements. The first one is about the puzzle and book sale next Saturday, October 23rd, and it's from 10 to 2. Please donate your good condition puzzles and books, and you can come and stock up for the winter as well. Puzzles for all ages can be left in the bins at the West door. I actually saw them, they're already there this morning. And approximately one book per person of current fiction, including children's, and nonfiction, politics, history, biography only, will be gladly accepted by arrangement at that time or by arrangement. So the times are today between 11 and 1, this Wednesday from 1:30 to 3:30, and Thursday from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Volunteers are also needed, so please contact Carol Card for more information. Our second announcement is about the pledge campaign. And if you haven't made your pledge yet, you should have gotten something in the mail, like the postal, like snail mail, or you can download it off the website, or in the back. That's what I did. I have my pledge right here, and I'm going to put it in the box as soon as I'm done my announcements. So you can do the same thing right now. There are papers in the back. And yes, okay, that's it. And if you like to chat with other members of the congregation and you're interested in serving on the nominating committee, please contact the board. We are planning to do there's one vacancy currently, and we're planning to fill it during the fall congregational meeting, which is on November 21st. So if you are interested at all, please contact us as soon as possible. And there'll be a board meeting on Wednesday this week at 7 p.m. So if you're interested, you're always welcome to come and be an observer. And you can email Lisa at president@firstunitarianottawa.ca, and she'll send you the link and all the information that you might need. If you have any other questions or concerns that you want to bring to the board's attention, you can always email us at bod@firstunitarianottawa.ca. Thank you, and everybody have a great service.
Thank you, Amy. A few additional announcements from our Environmental Action Group. So they'd like to start with a quote, inspirational quote from Karen Bramer from the Unitarian Universalist Association's Green Sanctuary Program. I quote, "We do this work because we love this life and this planet," end quote. So Enviro Action, Week 3's Fall Action, suggestion is to bring some plants into your home. Not only can houseplants look attractive and lift your spirits, bringing the feel of nature indoors during the cold winter months, they can aid in purifying indoor air. Some of the most common purifying plants are English ivy, snake plants, spider plants, aloe vera, and chrysanthemums. This week's Enviro Advocacy. The Independent Electricity System Operator recently issued their report in response to last spring's public demands, including those of our board and members of the congregation, to phase out gas-fired electricity by 2030. The Ontario Clean Air Alliance assesses their report as fundamentally flawed, overemphasizing risk and misleading Ontarians as to cost and availability of alternate sources and systems. We're asking you to support the Ontario Clean Air Alliance and write to Ontario's Energy Minister, Todd Smith. Ask him to direct the Independent Electricity System Operator to develop a serious plan to achieve a complete gas phase-out by 2013. For links, you can check out the EUU or the Climate Confrontation page. And lastly, some good news. Advocacy works. Following last week's Enviro advocacy to Mayor Watson and City Councillors, this past Wednesday morning, Ottawa City Council became the 32nd Ontario municipality to support the call for the phase-out of gas-fired electricity in Ontario by 2030. Thank you to all those who wrote letters. Also, just a reminder that next Saturday, October 23rd, is the next trivia night at 7 p.m. You can check in the EUU or email trivia@firstunitarianottawa.ca for more information. During the continuing responses to COVID, we encourage you to sign up to receive the EUU, our weekly email newsletter. Check out our Facebook page or our webpage for notices and updates. Our calendar is as full as ever, albeit much of it online. Whatever your heritage, whatever your faith, whomever you love, and however you identify, today you are part of our spiritual community. Welcome.
Bonjour, mes amis. Oh, where are we here? You know, last week when I came forward and took my mask off, it took with it one of my hearing aids. There's always a bit of risk on Sunday morning. Good morning. I am the Reverend Eric Meter. It is my privilege and honor and pleasure to serve this faith community. And we are here on what I'm told is a rather typical Sunday morning, so let us stay bundled up and know that the October rains will help bring spring flowers. Today we light our chalice to these words by Orlando Brugnola. Flame, friend of our most ancient ancestors, we kindle you now to make visible in this time, to make you visible now in this time. Yet in truth you burn always in the unique worth of each and every person, in the imagination, in the turning of heart to sorrow or joy, in the call to hope and in the call to justice. Burn bright before us, burn bright within us. Time for drastic measures. Our chalice is lit, and now we will have our first hymn sung for us, and then our story for all ages.
Nao Yaxley, our religious education communicator, is downstairs with the children right now, so I'll read you today's story called Trying by Kobe Yamada and illustrated by Elise Hurst. How do you do that? I didn't realize I had said it out loud, but the sculptor looked over and replied, "You simply do it." "Oh no, I could never do that." "How do you know?" he asked. "I just know." Confused, I walked away. He must be joking, I thought. But as I left, I couldn't help wondering what it would be like to create something so incredible. When I returned, the sculptor looked over at me and asked, "How is your sculpture coming along?" "I'm just here to watch." "The best way to give your talents an opportunity is to try," he responded. "I'd rather just watch. I can't mess things up if I just watch." "Ah, yes," he nodded. "If you do nothing, it feels safe. But everything stays the same. If you do nothing, there's less to experience, less to love, less to learn. The fear of failing is the scariest part, and it stops most people from starting. The only way to get where you want to go is to take a step in that direction. And the best way to do that is to begin." It was all I could think about. Even as I slept, I dreamt of creating beautiful things. I was excited to get started. But as I was working, I realized that something was wrong. With every strike, I felt a little more deflated. With every blow, my disappointment grew. This was not turning out the way I had imagined. Why did I think I could do it? Why had I let myself care about this so much? The next time I saw the sculptor, he asked about my work. I told him it was no good and that I had to quit. "Why would you do that?" he asked. "Because it feels awful to want something so badly and then just be disappointed." "Yes," the sculptor replied, "disappointment hurts. But failure is temporary and in many ways necessary. It shows us how something can't be done, which means we're a little closer to finding out how it can. When you first tried to walk, you fell, but you picked yourself up and tried again. You were willing to fail over and over, and that is why you succeeded. How do I know this? You're standing in front of me now." I had tried, and I had failed. Now he was asking me to try again? What good would that do? I had already proven I couldn't do it. But if I was honest, I wanted to believe I could. So even though I worried that I wasn't good enough, I decided to try again. I worked, and then I worked some more. And while I could see it was a little better, it still wasn't all that I wanted it to be. I stormed up to the sculptor. "See, I told you it wasn't any good, and this proves it. Are you happy now?" "Yes," he replied. "I'm happy. It's good to see you sculpting. But it's terrible. I don't even know what I'm making anymore." "You're making progress," he explained. "I see talents emerging. I see risks being taken. I see courage. I see caring. I see perseverance. Yes, I see much progress indeed, and I hope you'll keep trying." I tried again, and again, and again. As I stepped back and looked at my work, I had to admit, I wished it was better. I went to talk to the sculptor, and he asked me to go for a walk with him. He said, "I know it can be hard when things don't turn out as you had hoped, but be proud of your failures. I know I am, every one of them." "I can't imagine you ever failing." And he laughed. more times than I can count. But each time you fail, you get a little smarter, a little braver, and a little stronger. The truth is, we're all failures. The dreamers, the doers, the creators. Being a failure means you loved something, you cared. It means you stepped forward and you didn't hold back, and you tried. That's why I brought you here. He gestured to the statues around him. These are my friends. These are my failures. I'm grateful for every one of them because they helped me become who I am today. I'll tell you a little secret, the sculpture confided. I am now much closer to the end of my life than the beginning. And time passes whether we have the courage to do something good and worthwhile or we don't. It's been years since he's been gone. I will always treasure the time I spent with him, and I will never forget our conversations or what he taught me. When we make it safe to fail, we make it safe to succeed. How do I do that?
Thank you, Casey. That was wonderful. The words for our call to worship this morning are by Gordon McKeeman. Ministry is a quality of relationship between and among human beings that beckon forth hidden possibilities, inviting people into deeper, more constant, more reverent relationship with the world and with one another. Carrying forward a long heritage of hope and liberation that has dignified and informed the human venture over many centuries. Being present with, to, and for others in their terrors and torments, in their grief, misery, and pain, knowing that those feelings are our feelings too. Welcome, everyone. Come, let us worship together.
I am Reverend Ellen Bell. I am the spiritual care visitor for this congregation. At this time in the service, we accept people's personal joys and sorrows, and we do this by putting stones in water and allowing the ripples thus created to send their messages out to the universe where they can be congratulated or commiserated with. We have a big stone this morning of thanks from Terry, our chair of the financial campaign, thanking everybody who has pledged already and encouraging everybody who hasn't yet pledged to please do so. And a stone of big congratulations to Betty, a longtime member of this congregation, who will turn 100 years old on the 19th of October. A stone of sorrow and concern for all the unhappy events that are taking place in the world. May we each be able to do our own little part to alleviate some of these issues. And one last stone for all those joys and sorrows that are held in our hearts. We will now have a moment of silence.
Our reading this morning is from Stefan Jonassen. There may be something incredibly naive about the notion that we can have meaningful relationships without any mandated behavior or commonly held belief. Perhaps if it were more easily accomplished, divorce lawyers would find themselves out of work. Yet we try as a religious community to live into this noble ideal. We do not say that behavior and belief are unimportant, but we do say through words and deeds that our distinguishing characteristic is that we are people who belong to one another. We covenant together, making voluntary commitments with our spiritual neighbors, viewing one another as kindred spirits, and interacting with love and compassion. It is interesting and inspiring to see how that sense of belonging can transcend the differences of time and place. To meet a Unitarian Universalist from another community, whether a rural crossroads or a large metropolitan center, or with a different theological perspective, be it Christian or humanist, theist or eclectic, is to immediately recognize a kindred spirit. It is almost like coming across a cousin, say a second cousin, once removed, who turns out to share many of our own values and behaviors, idiosyncrasies and passions. When we encounter a kindred spirit, a person to whom we belong and who in turn belongs to us, we are reminded of the holiest of religious truths. All of our sisters and brothers are in the things that matter most. We are one great human family, and those religious traditions that find their distinctive emphasis in recognizing that we belong to one another are, in fact, those religious communities that are best positioned in a broken world to bring healing to the earth and a sense of kinship to all who dwell here.
Thank you, Lisa. Stefan Jonassen, who wrote the reading that Lisa shared, is a Unitarian minister of Icelandic descent, serving a congregation near Winnipeg, also of many Unitarians of Icelandic descent. He is a man of great humor and faith, and he's a kick in the pants. He's a lot of fun. And as much faith as Stefan has, he is one of us, and I count myself among that number, who asks every now and then, what are we here for? I mean, really, what are we here for? If you are here in our worship hall this morning, you've signed up online or otherwise with the church office and provided proof of your COVID vaccinations. If you are watching this via streaming or later via YouTube, you still made some choice to either have some electronic device before you and chose this over the preponderance of news shows or cat videos available to you. I bring this up in way of introduction because today, October 17th, is the International Day for the Eradication of Poverty. Did you know that? I didn't, until one of you pointed out to me a couple weeks ago. Now, looking back on the history of religion, at least in the Western context, based on the teachings of Jesus, early Christians, early Christianity, focused at least in part on providing care of widows and orphans, providing band-aids, but necessary ones, we might say today. The early Christians, following the teachings of a renegade Jewish prophet, taught adherence to laws greater than those of any state, and care to one another in the here and now. In order to do that, they set themselves apart as much as they could from the mainstream of the society in which they lived. They didn't expect they'd ever begin to change the status quo. It was their faith, but probably not their immediate or short-term expectation. And then the church grew over time and became a power broker itself. We know how well that went. In response, one item of response, Martin Luther wrote to his bishop to protest the selling of indulgences, and a reformation of faith and institutions of religion began. Now, as a personal aside, just before the turn of the last century, the treasurer of the congregation I then served, once at a church function, a party if you will, the treasurer, a former CIA employee actually, dressed up like a friar of old and sold to us indulgences. The proceeds thereof went to the congregation. Seizing the opportunity, I purchased, at some personal expense, indulgences freeing me of responsibility from any past or future ill-advised decisions, of which there have been some. And while I would never advise such practices, silly as they may be, I will note that we had a record financial year that year. Seriously, though, we've come a long way since the days of Martin Luther, and we have a long way yet to travel. While religious institutions have certainly caused great harm over the years, members of faith communities have also done much good. You know this. What I'm saying here is nothing new. Especially when members of diverse faith communities come together in common cause, the results are often inspiring. Think of Selma. When I was 13, my parents very active in the church, my brother and I would have to drag them away from coffee hour to say, "It's time for lunch, Mom and Dad." Until the day my parents were talking with my Sunday school teacher, Shirley McDonald, and they were walking out towards the car, and because possibly she was telling my parents what a bad boy I was in class that day, I wanted to be close enough to be within earshot. Because when you're 13 or 12, it's all about you. And what I heard my Sunday school teacher tell my parents was this: when I was in Selma marching with Martin, my Sunday school teacher, Shirley McDonald, had marched in Selma. The world expanded for me, grew larger for me in that moment. My Sunday school teacher was part of making history good again. We make history each and every day. The only question is how and in what form. Closer to home now, think of all those who gathered on Parliament Hill on September 30th, less than 3 weeks ago now. Following that, Ottawa's Capital Region Interfaith Council is dedicating its annual prayer service this afternoon to remembering and honoring the children of Canada's residential school system. Our affiliated minister, Reverend Linda, will act as MC of the event, and I have prepared a short but hearty Unitarian reflection. The event will be online this afternoon from 3 until 5. There are flyers with information about it on the table you pass as you entered and the table you pass as you leave this space. Pick one up. It's going to be good. Well, let me back up a moment now before I make another point. Over the last 15, maybe 20, maybe longer than that years, Unitarians worldwide have been looking at the covenantal basis of our faith. We have never been a creedal faith. We are not people who say that in order to be with us, you must profess a belief in X or Y or Z philosophy. Instead, we say, here are the ways we have found to live respectful, meaningful lives. If these principles make sense to you as guideposts, join us and make our community even more vital and even more capable. Now, covenant is a promise based on faith, a heart and soul promise, if you will. Covenants are not contracts in any legal sense of the term. Covenants are made between people who know that people, all of us, are fallible. We know that even with the best intentions, we break faith with one another from time to time. Yet we know that we can come back together to restore what may need to be restored. Of course, this is seldom easily done, but efforts to heal what can be repaired always leave us more than we had been before, wiser and more compassionate towards others, and even, sometimes often, more compassionate towards ourselves. The growing edge of our religious movement has been a slow and at times awkward realization that to be in covenant with any integrity means that we are accountable to others. And while I haven't heard it named as such, this is what is behind the proposed 8th principle of Unitarianism. Will we commit to being accountable for taking the logical and socially advisable step of proclaiming that we will do what we can to dismantle systems of racism and other forms of oppression? There are many who say that such a promise is inherent within our current 7 principles, and I agree. Yet when those who have felt such oppression say to me they need more, they have been hurt and they need a clearer covenant so that all of us can be more fully accountable to one another, who am I to say no? These are my sisters and brothers, my genderqueer siblings, my son, my daughter, my teacher, my companions on the road of life. Who would I be if I were to say no to them? Let's return to this being the International Day of the Eradication of Poverty. I don't know how to eradicate poverty. Do you? I mean, you may. This is a faith community and a city of civic leaders and teachers. I certainly hope that among you are those who better understand how to alleviate and eradicate poverty than I do. Any takers? I'll gladly share my place with you, now or at any other time. All right. Given all that needs to be done to make human society a more fitting home for us, a more fitting home given the beauty of the natural and world we inhabit, there are times when I think of us like modern-day Don Quixotes, tilting at the windmills of equitable distribution of resources and working to dismantle all that has brought about the climate crisis. How in the world can we think we are enough to remedy such widespread and deep-seated problems? And yet, our collective conscience simply will not allow us to be complacent. But then, time and time again, history shows us that the impossible will take a little while, meaning that the impossible is only such when we think it will always be. Did Martin Luther really think he could change the religious landscape of Western civilization? But that's what happened. The work is far from done. So we have set about to wrestle with the giants and windmills of our age with as much savvy and as many companions as we can muster. Time and time again, I've heard that the 5,000 or so Unitarians across Canada manifest an impact far beyond our modest numbers. That's true. When we have brought our voices together, we have shown that we will be heard. We can do more than the early Christians thought that they were capable of. We can and have influenced both policy and societal norms to the benefit of many. We've helped create space for folks of many ethnicities, backgrounds, sexual preference, and forms of gender. Expressions to say, I belong here. I belong. Deal with it if you have to. But, well, no, and we need to remember that we have to be more than those who face down giants. Some of us are more willing to do that. Some of us need a little more tangible benefit every now and then. We owe it to ourselves to take on smaller projects as well, those where we create clear wins, where we can see before us the beneficial impact of what we do. Just after Easter, the spring after the hurricanes of Katrina and Rita devastated New Orleans, I helped lead my then congregation's youth in a service trip to the area. For a week, we bunked at the First Unitarian Church of New Orleans and worked an hour or so south of there. We had to commute to a group of small houses, single-family homes in Plaquemines Parish beside the levee. The homes there had been untouched in the months since the storms. We found household items, scrapbooks, wedding albums, high school yearbooks, abandoned dolls. In those homes, we tore down the walls to the studs so that the homes could be rebuilt. We learned some of what it means to lose a home. We learned some of how much it takes to restore what has been lost. We learned that while we could only improve things a bit, every effort we made was added to the efforts of others, and that the progress made was noticeable. And then there is our deep-seated concern, about getting things just right. When I let our music director, Music Jen, oh, there you are. You were there, but then you're there. When I let Music Jen know about what I was going to be talking about to you today, she recommended the hymn we heard sung earlier, that Phil and Ann sung earlier, "We'll Build a Land." I love that song. And it's one I hadn't heard in years. Why? Because to many south of our border, if not many here in Canada, I simply don't know, that song rings of colonial expansion. Whose justice gets to roll down, and at whose expense? I'm glad we had the song earlier here. While those are understandable concerns about whose justice and at whose expense, I worry about, to use an old phrase, maybe it's not politically correct anymore, but I worry about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, frankly. Without relationships in which accountability is paramount, concerns of political and theological correctness thrive and can fester. Within relationships in which accountability is paramount, trust is slowly earned, and concerns, when they're raised, are responded to and held in appropriate priority. What are we here for? Well, if we're doing what we need to be doing, we're trying. To go back to the story that Casey told us earlier. We're practicing. We're willing to get it wrong so that someday we can get it right, or close enough to right. We're gathering together to encourage one another on the way, sharing what we've learned as well as our inevitable stories of challenge. What are we here for? We're slowly learning how to be the people we most want to be. Who could ask for more? Thank you. Amen.
This is the time in our service when we usually accept the offering. You may go to our website or contact our finance manager to find out how you can keep up with your pledge or to make a donation during these very unusual times. We give these gifts freely. We receive these gifts gratefully. We dedicate these gifts to the work of our congregation, serving human wholeness, caring for the planet, upholding religious freedom, welcoming the stranger, loving one another.
Still with hope I meet each day. remained in my dark, always let it lose its spark. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to truth. Just as long as my heart beats, I must answer yes to love. Disappointment pierced me through, still I kept on loving you. If they ask what I did best, tell them I said yes to love.
Before we begin to close this time of worship and reflection, a reminder that our hospitality hour will begin online at 11:30. The link is on the church website and was included in last Friday's EUU. To those here in our worship hall, we welcome you to congregate safely outside once this worship service has concluded. As you do so, please be mindful to stay masked and maintain social distancing. We extinguish our chalice this morning to these words adapted from those by Kristen L. Harper. And if you would, as we did last week, just reach out like this to those around you. COVID has made us more insular than ever before. So if it's comfortable to you, reach out knowing that we are still part of a larger and vibrant community. Christian L. Harper. I do not wish to breathe another breath if it is not shared with others. The breath of life is not mine alone. I brought myself to be with you, hoping that by inhaling the compassion, the courage, the hope found here, I can exhale the fear, the selfishness, the separateness I keep so close to my skin. I cannot live another moment, at least not one of joy, unless you and I find our oneness somewhere among each other, somewhere between the noise, somewhere between the silence and the next breath. This morning's chalice is extinguished, but our connections and our faith remain. Jen, will you offer a closing song?
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Cool dans mes mains, vide espoir et de justice. Donne-lui-moi, ciel emporte-moi, source de vie, viens vers moi, viens vers moi.
My friends, go in peace, go in love, go in joy on this dreary day, bring more warmth to it, and may all be well.